Most people read books to feel intelligent. They highlight lines, save quotes, and talk about ideas they never use. But intelligent people read for a different reason. They read to gain control. Control over their thoughts, their emotions, and their reactions when life becomes uncomfortable. I learned this the hard way. There was a time when my bookshelf was full, my notes were extensive, and my confidence looked solid from the outside. Yet inside, I was reactive, distracted, and inconsistent. A small comment could ruin my mood. A setback could derail my entire week. I was consuming knowledge, but I wasn't changing, and that gap slowly became impossible to ignore. The shift happened when I stopped asking, "What does this book teach?" and started asking, "What does this book demand of me?" One book forced me to notice how quickly I reacted. Another exposed how often I avoided discomfort. Another stripped away the stories I told myself to escape responsibility. These books didn't motivate me. They trained me. They showed me that intelligence isn't about knowing more. It's about mastering what happens inside you when no one is watching. I've seen this pattern repeat with people around me. A close friend, brilliant by any standard, struggled with anger and impatience. He read constantly, but nothing changed until he treated reading like practice, not entertainment. He began applying one idea at a time, pausing instead of reacting, sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it. Over time, his decisions became calmer, his relationship steadier, and his confidence quieter but stronger. That's what this audiobook is about. Not a list of books to impress others, not shortcuts to sound smart. This is about using books the way intelligent people actually use them, as tools to sharpen discipline, build emotional control, and train long-term thinking. These ideas are not abstract. They are meant to be lived, tested, and repeated until they become part of who you are. In the next chapters, we'll break down how intelligent readers turn books into mental training, how they read to reduce noise, strengthen focus, and build inner stability, how they apply one principle deeply instead of chasing dozens of ideas, and how you can do the same, starting exactly where you are, with the mind you have right now. You don't need to read more books. You need to read with intention. You need to slow down, observe yourself, and allow the lessons to change how you think, act, and respond. Master your mind, and everything else becomes easier to carry. Intelligence grows when you are willing to look inward without excuses. It grows when you notice your habits, your impulses, and the stories you repeat to protect your comfort. Reading becomes powerful when it leads to action, reflection, and restraint. When a book helps you pause instead of explode, choose instead of drift, and respond instead of react, it stops being information. It becomes training, and training, done daily, quietly reshapes who you are becoming. This is not about becoming perfect or emotionless. It is about becoming steady, aware, and responsible. Calm thinking creates better choices. Better choices create better lives. This process is slow, but it is real. Over time, it compounds. If this message resonates with you, share this video with a friend you know is struggling and needs it to improve their life. Chapter 1. Reading to control. Reactions, not feelings. Most people believe intelligence means having calm emotions. They think smart people don't feel anger, fear, jealousy, or frustration. That belief is wrong. Intelligent people feel everything. The difference is not in what they feel, but in what they do next. Control is not emotional numbness. Control is the ability to pause before emotion becomes action. I didn't understand this at first. I thought reading would make me more reasonable, more patient, more composed. Instead, I became someone who could explain emotions very well while still being ruled by them. I could quote ideas about awareness and discipline, yet a single comment could pull me into defensiveness. Knowledge gave me language, but not control. The shift came when I stopped reading books as explanations and started using them as training. One particular passage forced me to notice how fast my reactions were. Not the big ones, but the small ones. The sigh when someone disagreed. the tension in my chest when I felt ignored, the urge to justify myself immediately. The book didn't tell me to suppress those feelings. It told me to observe them without obeying them. That is the first way intelligent people use books to master their mind. They read to build space between stimulus and response, space between emotion and behavior. This space is small at first, almost invisible, but it is powerful. In that space, choice lives. A colleague of mine struggled with this more than anyone I knew. Highly capable, respected, and sharp, but reactive. Meetings turned tense. Feedback felt personal. He read constantly, always searching for insight. Nothing changed until he stopped chasing understanding and started practicing restraint. He used one idea from a book for weeks. Delay your response by 10 seconds. That was it. No affirmations, no journaling, just delay. Over time, his presence changed. Not because he felt calmer, but because he acted calmer. Books that train reaction control do not comfort you. They expose you. They make you notice patterns you would rather ignore. They show you how often your ego speaks before your values do. Intelligent readers don't rush past those moments. They slow down. They reread the uncomfortable parts. They sit with the tension instead of escaping it. This is where most people fail. They read when they feel good and stop when they feel challenged. But the moment a book irritates you is the moment it becomes useful. Irritation is a signal. It points to a habit that has been running your life without permission. I remember recommending one of these books to a close friend who was going through a stressful period at work. After a few chapters, he told me the book was too harsh and too confrontational. What he really meant was that it refused to comfort him. It forced him to see how often he reacted emotionally and then justified it intellectually. Months later, after another setback, he picked it up again. This time, he read slowly. He stopped after paragraphs. He practiced pausing in real conversations. That second reading changed more than the first 10 books he had finished. To apply this, you don't need more time or more books. You need intention. When you read, so pay attention to your body. Notice when your breathing changes. Notice when you want to argue with the page. Notice when you feel seen. These reactions are not obstacles. They are data. They show you where control is weak and where training is needed. One principle intelligent readers follow is simple. Feelings are allowed. Reactions are optional. Reading becomes the gym where that principle is trained. Every paragraph is an opportunity to practice pause. Every trigger is a repetition. Over time, you stop reacting automatically, not because emotions disappear, but because awareness arrives first. This training doesn't stay in the book. It carries into daily life. You pause before responding to messages. You listen longer before defending yourself. You choose silence when noise would cost you clarity. These are small changes, but they compound. Control grows quietly. The mistake many people make is trying to control emotions directly. That always fails. Emotions resist force, but reactions can be trained. Books give you a safe environment to practice that training before life tests you in real time. If you want to read like an intelligent person, stop asking what the book says. Ask what it reveals about you. Ask where you rush, where you resist, where you react. That is where the real lesson lives. There will be days when you forget to pause. Days when you react before you notice. That does not mean the training failed. It means you are human. Intelligent readers do not demand perfection. They demand consistency. They return to the practice again and again, page by page, moment by moment, reaction by reaction. Some people quit at this stage because the progress feels slow. There is no dramatic breakthrough, no instant calm, just small, repeated acts of restraint. But this is how real change happens. Quietly, invisibly, until one day you realize you no longer explode where you used to. You no longer chase the last word. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself in every moment. This is the point where control becomes identity. You are no longer someone trying to stay calm. You are someone who naturally pauses. That shift changes how others experience you and how you experience yourself. Respect grows without effort. Trust follows naturally. Your decisions feel cleaner. Your energy stops leaking into unnecessary conflict. These changes may seem subtle, but they redefine your daily experience. Conversations soften. Choices slow down. You feel less urgency to react and more confidence to wait. This is the quiet power intelligent readers build without announcing it. This is how mental strength is forged through reading. Mastery of the mind does not begin with thinking differently. It begins with reacting differently. And the discipline to do that is built one page at a time. When you finish a reading session, don't measure success by how many pages you covered. Measure it by one moment of restraint you practiced that day, one reaction you delayed, one impulse you didn't obey. That is progress. That is intelligence in motion. Over weeks and months, these small pauses reshape your character. You become someone who is not ruled by the first feeling that appears. You become someone who chooses. That is the foundation of mental mastery. Everything else builds on it. Chapter 2. Books that teach you to sit with discomfort. Most people stop reading when a book becomes uncomfortable. They say it's boring, too heavy, too negative, or not practical. What they really mean is simpler. The book is asking them to stay with something they usually run from. Intelligent people do the opposite. When reading becomes uncomfortable, they slow down, because discomfort is not a warning sign. It is a signal that real training has begun. Discomfort is one of the least understood forces in personal growth. We are taught to avoid it, fix it, or distract ourselves from it as quickly as possible. When something feels tense, boring, confronting, or emotionally heavy, the instinct is to escape. Scroll, switch books, seek motivation. Intelligent readers train themselves to stay, not because they enjoy discomfort, but because they understand its value. I used to abandon books the moment they felt dense or demanding. If a chapter required effort, rereading, or honest self-reflection, I assumed it wasn't written well or wasn't meant for me. Over time, I noticed a pattern. The books I finished easily entertained me. The books I quit early challenged me. That realization changed how I read forever. There was one book in particular that felt almost hostile. It offered no encouragement, no reassurance, no soft language. It asked direct questions I didn't want to answer. It pointed out behaviors I had rationalized for years. Every time I opened it, I felt resistance. My mind looked for reasons to stop. That resistance was not intellectual. It was emotional. And that's exactly why the book mattered. Intelligent people learn to recognize resistance as a form of information. Resistance shows you where comfort has been protecting habits that no longer serve you. When reading triggers frustration, boredom, or defensiveness, it's often because the book is touching a truth you've been avoiding. Running from that feeling keeps you the same. Staying with it changes you. I saw this clearly in someone close to me, a family member who was thoughtful, capable, and widely respected, yet deeply uncomfortable with uncertainty and self-criticism. They loved books that validated their perspective and avoided ones that questioned it. During a difficult period in their life, they were forced to confront patterns they had ignored. Eventually, they returned to a book they had previously dismissed as too harsh. This time, instead of reading for reassurance, they read for clarity. Slowly, carefully, often stopping to sit with the discomfort instead of escaping it. That process didn't feel good, but it worked. Books that train you to sit with discomfort don't provide immediate relief. They don't lift your mood. They don't make you feel inspired or confident in the moment. Instead, they increase your tolerance for tension. They expand your capacity to remain present when things feel unclear, unpleasant, or emotionally challenging. This capacity is a core trait of intelligent people. Think about how often discomfort shows up in daily life. Difficult conversations, delayed results, criticism, silence, waiting, uncertainty. Most poor decisions are not caused by a lack of intelligence, but by an inability to tolerate discomfort. People react, quit, or distract themselves, or seek shortcuts simply to escape an unpleasant feeling. Intelligent people train themselves to stay calm inside discomfort long enough to choose wisely. Reading is one of the safest environments to build this skill. There are no real consequences. No one is watching. No one is judging. Just you, the page, and the feeling that arises. When you resist a sentence, notice it. When you feel bored or irritated, don't rush past it. Stay. Ask yourself why this feels uncomfortable. What expectation is being challenged? What belief is being threatened? This is where reading becomes mental training. You're not just processing information, you're strengthening your ability to remain steady under internal pressure. Each time you continue reading despite discomfort, you're practicing emotional endurance. You are teaching your mind that discomfort is survivable. That clarity often comes after tension, not before it. Many people misunderstand this process and think they are doing something wrong when reading feels hard. They assume growth should feel motivating or uplifting. That assumption keeps them stuck. Growth often feels quiet, slow, and uncomfortable. Intelligent readers accept this without drama. They don't rush the process. They don't look for shortcuts. They respect the pace of real change. There was a period in my own life when I deliberately chose books that challenged me rather than comforted me. I limited how much I read each day, not to reduce effort, but to increase attention. Some days I would read only a few pages, but those pages stayed with me. They followed me into conversations, decisions, and moments of stress. The discomfort they created forced reflection. Reflection led to adjustment. Adjustment led to growth. This is the difference between reading for consumption and reading for transformation. Consumption is easy. Transformation demands tolerance. Intelligent people know that their ability to sit with discomfort determines how deeply they can change. They don't expect immediate results. They focus on capacity, the capacity to stay present, the capacity to wait, the capacity to think clearly when emotions are unsettled. To apply this, you don't need to seek out the most difficult books available. You simply need to change how you respond to discomfort when it appears. When a book feels slow, dense, or confronting, resist the urge to switch. Stay a little longer. Reread the sentence that triggered resistance. Let the discomfort exist without trying to fix it. This is not passive. It is active restraint. Over time, this practice changes how you handle discomfort outside of reading. You become less reactive in tense situations. You stop rushing to fill silence. You allow uncertainty to exist without panicking. You make fewer decisions just to escape a feeling. This quiet strength becomes visible to others. They may not know why, but they sense stability. Some people mistake this approach for emotional coldness. It is the opposite. Sitting with discomfort increases emotional maturity. You become more aware, not less. More patient, not detached. You learn to feel deeply without being controlled by what you feel. That balance is rare, and it is a defining trait of intelligent people. Books that teach you to sit with discomfort don't promise comfort. They promise depth. They shape your inner posture. They train you to remain grounded when life doesn't offer clarity or ease. This skill matters far more than speed, motivation, or inspiration. If you want to read like an intelligent person, stop asking whether a book feels good. Ask whether it asks something of you. Ask whether it stretches your tolerance for tension. Ask whether it forces you to slow down and face yourself honestly. Discomfort is not the enemy of growth. It is the doorway. Intelligent readers don't rush through that doorway. They step inside and stay long enough to learn what it has to teach. Chapter 3. Using books to break mental noise. One of the quiet reasons intelligent people read is not to add more thoughts, but to remove unnecessary ones. Mental noise is not a lack of intelligence. It is an overload of unfiltered input. Opinions, notifications, comparisons, unfinished thoughts. and constant internal commentary fill the mind until clarity becomes rare. Most people live inside this noise without realizing it. Intelligent people actively train themselves to reduce it. Mental noise feels normal because it is familiar. It shows up as restlessness, overthinking, and the sense that your mind never truly stops. You may not feel stressed, but you feel scattered. You jump from idea to idea. You replay conversations. You imagine outcomes that never arrive. This state is exhausting, even when life looks calm from the outside. And I didn't notice how loud my inner world had become until I tried to sit with a book in silence. No music, no phone nearby, just reading. Within minutes, my attention fractured. Thoughts unrelated to the page pulled me away. Plans, worries, unfinished tasks. The book wasn't difficult. My mind was undisciplined. Intelligent people don't accept this as normal. They understand that clarity is not something you wait for. It is something you train. And reading, done properly, becomes one of the most effective ways to do that. A friend of mine experienced this shift after burning out at work. Highly productive, constantly connected, always thinking ahead. When he tried to rest, his mind wouldn't slow down. Even during quiet moments, his thoughts raced. He began reading again, not to learn new strategies, but to rebuild focus. At first, it was uncomfortable. He could barely get through a few pages without drifting. Instead of quitting, he changed his approach. Short sessions, full attention, no multitasking. Over time, his mind became quieter, not empty, but organized. This is how intelligent people use books to break mental noise. They treat reading as an exercise in attention. Not speed, not volume. Attention, one page, one paragraph, one idea at a time. When the mind wanders, they gently bring it back. Not with force, but with patience. Most people read the way they consume content. Fast, distracted, half present. That style of reading adds to mental noise instead of reducing it. Intelligent readers slow down deliberately. They read fewer pages, but they inhabit them fully. This changes how the mind behaves outside of reading. When you read this way, you begin to notice how often your mind tries to escape the present moment. You see how quickly it seeks stimulation or distraction. Instead of judging this tendency, intelligent readers observe it. Observation itself begins to quiet the noise. Awareness interrupts automatic thinking. There was a period in my own life when I felt mentally crowded. Too many inputs, too many ideas, too many voices. Reading became the one place where I practiced mental order. I chose books that required attention but didn't overwhelm me. I read slowly, sometimes rereading the same paragraph several times. Not to memorize it, but to stay with it. That practice didn't just improve my reading. It changed how I thought. Mental noise often disguises itself as productivity. Constant thinking feels like progress. But most of that thinking is repetitive and unproductive. Intelligent people learn to distinguish between useful thought and noise. Books help them do this by creating a structured space for thinking. The author leads, the reader follows. The mind rests inside that structure. This is especially important in a world that constantly demands reaction. Notifications train the brain to jump. Scrolling trains the brain to skim. Reading trains the brain to stay. Intelligent people protect this training. They create conditions where reading can do its work. Silence, time boundaries, minimal distractions. Breaking mental noise doesn't happen instantly. At first, you may notice the noise more clearly. This can feel uncomfortable. Many people mistake this for failure and return to distraction. Intelligent readers understand that noticing the noise is progress. You cannot quiet what you cannot see. As this practice deepens, something subtle changes. Thoughts slow down, not because you force them to stop, but because they are no longer competing for attention. You become more selective about what you engage with. You stop following every mental impulse. This selectivity is a form of intelligence. Books that help reduce mental noise are not necessarily complex. They are clear. They invite focus. They reward patience. Intelligent readers don't chase stimulation. They choose clarity. They allow reading to become a form of mental hygiene, clearing away clutter accumulated throughout the day. This clarity extends into decision-making. When the mind is less noisy, choices feel simpler. You are less reactive. You see options more clearly. You feel less urgency to decide immediately. This is not because you know more, but because fewer irrelevant thoughts interfere. To apply this, you don't need long reading sessions. You need quality attention. Choose a consistent time. Remove distractions. Read slowly. When your mind wanders, return without frustration. This is not about discipline in the harsh sense. It is about training presence. Over time, you may notice that silence becomes less uncomfortable. Boredom becomes less threatening. You are no longer driven to fill every gap with stimulation. This is a sign that mental noise is decreasing. Your mind is learning to rest without collapsing into distraction. Intelligent people value this ability deeply. In a noisy world, clarity becomes a competitive advantage, not because it makes you faster, but because it makes you accurate. You see what matters. You ignore what doesn't. You respond instead of react. Reading, when used this way, is not an escape from thinking. It is a refinement of it. It teaches the mind to move deliberately instead of chaotically, to stay with one idea long enough for understanding to form. If you want to read like an intelligent person, stop using books to add more information to an already crowded mind. Use them to remove what doesn't belong. Let reading become a space where the noise settles and clarity returns. This quiet clarity is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything that follows. Decisions become cleaner, and emotions become easier to manage. Attention becomes steadier, and in that steadiness, mastery begins to take shape. Chapter 4. Reading to Build. Emotional discipline. Most people believe emotional control comes from motivation. They think that if they feel inspired enough, calm enough, or confident enough, their behavior will naturally improve. Intelligent people learn a harder truth. Emotional control is not built by how you feel. It is built by what you practice when you don't feel like it. This is where reading separates the disciplined from the distracted. Many people read only when their mood is right, when they feel curious, when they feel calm, when they feel inspired. Intelligent people read even when they feel resistant, tired, impatient, or emotionally flat. Not because they enjoy forcing themselves, but because they understand what reading is really training. Emotional discipline is the ability to act according to values instead of moods. Books, when used properly, are one of the simplest ways to train this skill, not by hyping you up, but by asking you to show up consistently, regardless of how you feel. I used to associate reading with a certain emotional state, quiet time, motivation, a sense of improvement. When that state wasn't present, I postponed reading. Over time, I realized I was reinforcing the very weakness I wanted to fix. I was teaching myself that growth only happens when conditions are comfortable. That realization was uncomfortable, because it meant my inconsistency wasn't caused by lack of time or energy. It was caused by emotional dependence. I was waiting to feel ready instead of training myself to act ready. A colleague of mine illustrated this clearly. Intelligent, capable, ambitious. He read widely, but irregularly. When life was calm, he read. And when work became stressful, reading disappeared. He assumed this was normal. Until he noticed that during stressful periods, his emotional reactions worsened. Irritability increased. Focus dropped. Decisions became rushed. The very moments when he needed emotional discipline, most were the moments he stopped training it. Eventually, he changed one thing. He committed to reading for a short, fixed amount of time every day. No matter how he felt, 5 minutes on bad days, 10 on good ones. The content mattered less than the consistency. Over months, his emotional responses shifted, not dramatically, quietly. He became less reactive, not because life became easier, but because his inner structure became stronger. This is what intelligent people understand. Emotional discipline is not built during calm moments. It is built during resistance. Reading becomes a daily rehearsal for self-control. You sit down when you don't feel like it. You stay present when your mind wants to wander. You continue when boredom or irritation appears. Each of these moments is a repetition. Most people misunderstand discipline and associate it with harshness or rigidity. In reality, emotional discipline is gentle but firm. You don't punish yourself for resistance. You acknowledge it and proceed anyway. Reading teaches this balance naturally. The book does not care about your mood. It waits. You either show up or you don't. There was a period in my life when reading felt dry and unrewarding. No insight, no excitement, just words on a page. In the past, I would have stopped. Instead, I continued, shortening the sessions but keeping them daily. Weeks later, something shifted. Not in the reading itself, but in my behavior. I noticed I was less dependent on emotional highs to act. I could do difficult things without negotiating with my feelings first. This is a subtle but powerful change. Emotional discipline does not remove emotions. It changes your relationship with them. Feelings become information, not commands. Reading trains this by creating a space where you practice staying engaged without emotional payoff. Many people chase motivation through books. They want to feel energized, inspired, or reassured. Intelligent people use books to build stability. They read to normalize effort without reward. They learn to sit with neutrality. This skill carries into every area of life. Think about how many decisions are delayed or avoided because the emotional state isn't right. Difficult conversations postponed. Important work delayed. Boundaries softened. Emotional discipline reduces this friction. You act when action is needed, not when it feels pleasant. Reading supports this because it is a voluntary effort. No one forces you to read. There are no external consequences for skipping it. This makes it a perfect environment to train self-directed discipline. You either honor your commitment or you don't. Over time, honoring it becomes part of your identity. One of the most noticeable changes in emotionally disciplined readers is how steady they appear to others. They don't rush. They don't overreact. They don't require constant reassurance. This steadiness is not personality. It is practice, built quietly, one session at a time. To apply this, stop treating reading as a mood-based activity. Set a minimum standard that is easy enough to meet even on bad days. Protect that time. When resistance appears, don't argue with it. Acknowledge it and read anyway. This is not about forcing insight. It is about reinforcing reliability. Over time, you will notice that resistance loses its power, not because it disappears, but because you stop obeying it automatically. You become someone who can act despite emotional fluctuations. That is emotional discipline. Books that build this discipline are not always exciting. They are consistent. They demand your presence without offering immediate reward. Intelligent people value this. They understand that the ability to function without emotional incentive is rare and valuable. This discipline reshapes your inner world. You stop relying on motivation to move forward. You stop waiting to feel ready. You act, then adjust. This creates momentum that does not depend on mood. Reading, when used this way, becomes more than learning. It becomes conditioning. Conditioning for patience. Conditioning for restraint. Conditioning for long-term thinking. If you want to read like an intelligent person, stop asking how a book makes you feel. Ask how it trains you to behave. Ask whether it strengthens your ability to show up consistently. So ask whether it reduces your dependence on emotional comfort. Emotional discipline is not built through intensity. It is built through repetition. Books offer that repetition quietly, without pressure or performance. They meet you every day, exactly as you are, and ask the same question: will you show up? Each time you do, you strengthen something invisible but powerful. The ability to act without emotional permission. That ability changes everything. Chapter 5. Books as mirrors, not escapes. Many people use books as a way to escape themselves. They read to feel calmer, wiser, or temporarily removed from their own problems. There is nothing wrong with relief, but intelligent people understand a deeper use of reading. They use books as mirrors, not to feel better, but to see more clearly. A mirror does not comfort you. It shows you what is there. Reading becomes powerful when it does the same. When a book reflects your habits, your excuses, your patterns of avoidance, and the stories you quietly tell yourself to stay comfortable. This is not pleasant work, but it is honest work. I didn't always read this way. For a long time, books were a form of refuge. When life felt messy or uncertain, reading gave me the feeling of progress without demanding change, and I could underline meaningful lines and feel aligned with strong ideas even while my behavior stayed the same. The book made me feel intelligent. It did not make me accountable. That changed when I noticed a pattern. The books I enjoyed the most rarely challenged me. They reinforced what I already believed. They explained my struggles in ways that made me feel justified. The books I avoided did the opposite. They questioned my motives. They exposed contradictions between my values and my actions. I didn't dislike those books because they were wrong. I disliked them because they were accurate. Intelligent readers learn to pay attention to this reaction. Discomfort, defensiveness, and irritation while reading often mean the book is holding up a mirror. It is reflecting something you would rather not see. Most people close the book at that point. Intelligent people keep reading. I saw this clearly in a friend who was deeply committed to self-improvement, at least in theory. He read constantly, listened to audiobooks, and spoke fluently about growth. Yet the same conflicts repeated in his life. Same arguments, same disappointments, same blame. When I asked what books had challenged him the most, he couldn't answer. He had avoided them all. Eventually, after a difficult personal failure, he returned to a book he had abandoned years earlier. This time, he read it differently. He didn't rush. He didn't argue with the author. He let the uncomfortable observations land. The book forced him to see how often he avoided responsibility by focusing on intention instead of impact. That realization didn't feel empowering. It felt humbling, and it changed how he behaved. Books used as mirrors don't offer escape. They remove it. They strip away the comforting narratives you use to protect your identity. They make you confront gaps between who you think you are and how you actually show up. This is why they are so often avoided. Most people want books to validate them. Intelligent people want books to correct them. They understand that growth begins with accurate self-perception. Without that, effort is misdirected. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Reading as a mirror requires a different posture. You don't ask, "Do I agree with this?" You ask, "Where does this apply to me?" You don't highlight what sounds impressive. You notice what feels personal. You pay attention to sentences that provoke resistance or quiet discomfort. And I remember reading a passage that described a habit I recognized instantly. My first impulse was to dismiss it, to explain why my situation was different. I almost skipped ahead. Instead, I stopped. I reread it slowly. I let the description sit. That moment mattered more than finishing the chapter. It revealed a blind spot I had defended for years. This is how books become tools for self-mastery. Not by adding new identities, but by removing false ones. Not by telling you who to become, but by showing you who you are when no one is watching. Many people avoid this process because it feels threatening to the ego. Seeing yourself clearly means letting go of comforting stories. It means admitting where discipline is missing, where avoidance has been disguised as reason, where fear has been dressed up as preference. Intelligent people accept this discomfort because they value accuracy over comfort. Reading as a mirror also teaches humility. You begin to see how predictable human behavior is, including your own. You recognize patterns you once thought were unique to you. This doesn't diminish individuality. It deepens understanding. You stop taking every impulse personally. You stop defending every flaw. You focus on correction instead of justification. To apply this, Choose at least one book that challenges you instead of reassuring you. Read it slowly. When something irritates you, pause. Ask why. Write down what it reveals about your habits or assumptions. Do not rush to fix it. Awareness comes first. Change follows. Over time, this practice reshapes how you relate to yourself. You become less defensive and more observant, less concerned with appearing intelligent and more interested in becoming effective. This shift is quiet, but it is profound. Books as mirrors do not promise immediate relief. They offer clarity, and clarity, while uncomfortable at first, is freeing. It removes confusion. It reduces self-deception. It gives you a solid foundation to work from. If you want to read like an intelligent person, stop using books to escape your life. Use them to understand it. Let them show you where you hesitate, where you hide, and where you need to grow. The reflection may not flatter you, but it will strengthen you. Mastery of the mind begins with honesty, and honesty begins when you are willing to look at yourself without turning away. Chapter 6. How intelligent people. Apply one idea, not 10. One of the biggest reasons reading fails to change people is not lack of effort, but lack of focus. Many people read constantly, collect ideas, and feel mentally stimulated, yet nothing in their behavior changes. Intelligent people recognize this pattern early. They understand that transformation does not come from quantity of ideas, but from depth of application. Most readers treat books like a buffet. They sample a little of everything, take mental notes, and move on to the next insight. This creates the illusion of progress. You feel informed, but unchanged. Intelligent people approach books differently. They look for one principle worth living by, and they stay with it long enough for it to reshape their habits. I learned this lesson after a period of aggressive consumption, and I was reading multiple books at the same time, highlighting constantly, and feeling productive. Yet my routines remained unstable. My reactions were the same. My discipline didn't improve. Eventually, I realized I was using reading to avoid commitment. As long as I was learning, I didn't have to choose. That realization was uncomfortable. It meant the problem wasn't lack of access to information, it was lack of execution. I had been collecting ideas instead of practicing them. A colleague of mine demonstrated the alternative approach clearly. He chose one idea from a book about self-control. Delay gratification by creating intentional pauses. That was it. He didn't read ahead looking for more. He didn't stack principles. For 30 days, he applied that one idea to everything. Food choices, conversations, spending, work. Now, the result was not dramatic at first, but it was real. His behavior became more deliberate. His impulses lost power. That one idea, applied consistently, changed more than years of scattered reading. Intelligent people understand a simple truth. One idea lived deeply will outperform 10 ideas understood intellectually. Depth creates change. Volume creates noise. Books often present many powerful concepts, but trying to apply them all at once overwhelms the system. The mind resists. Behavior defaults back to old patterns. Intelligent readers resist this urge. They slow down and choose. Choosing one idea requires humility. It means accepting that you cannot do everything at once. It means letting go of the excitement of novelty and committing to repetition. This is where most people struggle. Repetition feels boring, but repetition is where identity is formed. There was a period when I forced myself to finish books without applying anything. I thought completion was the goal. It wasn't. Finishing books didn't change me. Living with one idea did. When I shifted my approach, my reading list shrank, but my growth accelerated. Intelligent readers treat each book like a workshop, not a lecture. They ask, what is the core principle here? Not, what can I learn? Once they identify it, they design their behavior around it. Reading slows down. Sometimes it stops entirely until the idea has been tested in real life. This approach requires patience. You don't rush to the next book. You allow the idea to work on you. You observe how it feels to live by it. You notice resistance. You adjust. Over time, the idea stops feeling external and becomes part of how you operate. Many people fear this approach because it feels limiting. They worry they will miss out on other insights. Intelligent people see it differently. They understand that depth creates integration. Once one idea is integrated, it becomes a foundation for the next. I saw this clearly in a friend who struggled with inconsistency. He would start routines enthusiastically and abandon them quickly. When he began applying one principle at a time, his behavior stabilized. He stopped negotiating with himself. He stopped chasing motivation. He focused on execution. Reading became a source of clarity, not confusion. To apply this, the next time you read a book, resist the urge to highlight everything. Look for the one sentence that challenges your behavior most. Write it down. Ask how it would change your daily actions if you actually lived by it. Then design your days around that principle. This doesn't require perfection. It requires commitment. You will fail some days. You will forget. Intelligent readers don't abandon the idea at the first sign of resistance. They return to it. Repetition matters more than enthusiasm. Over time, this practice changes how you see books. They stop feeling endless. They stop competing for your attention. Each one becomes a chapter in your development, not a distraction. Applying one idea deeply also builds confidence. You stop feeling overwhelmed by complexity. You know what you are working on. You see progress in your behavior. This reinforces trust in yourself. You become someone who executes, not just someone who understands. Intelligent people are not impressed by how much you know. They are impressed by how you live. Books become powerful when they move from your head into your actions. If you want to read like an intelligent person, stop collecting ideas. Start selecting them. Choose one. Live with it. Let it challenge you. Let it frustrate you. Let it reshape you. Mastery is not built through accumulation. It is built through application. One idea, practiced consistently, has the power to change everything. Chapter 7. Books that train. Long-term thinking. In a world that rewards short-term results, it is easy to forget the power of long-term thinking. Most people are taught to measure success by immediate achievements. The deal closed, the promotion earned, the goal met. While these milestones matter, they often obscure the true path to mastery. Intelligent people understand that long-term thinking is the foundation of sustainable success, and they use books to reinforce that mindset. Long-term thinking requires patience, resilience, and vision. It means working toward goals that might not show results for years. It means sacrificing today's comfort for tomorrow's rewards. It means enduring failures, setbacks, and uncertainty without losing faith in the bigger picture. Intelligent people do not chase the next quick win, and they focus on the trajectory, not the destination. I learned this the hard way. For years, I was obsessed with instant gratification. I wanted to see quick results from everything I did, books I read, projects I started, skills I tried to develop. I measured success in short bursts of productivity. If something didn't show immediate payoff, I moved on to something else. The problem was, nothing lasted. I started many things, but I finished few. The shift came when I read a book that completely changed my perspective. It wasn't a success formula. It wasn't a productivity hack. It was a book about the compound effect, the idea that small, consistent actions add up over time to create significant results. That book taught me that the most important changes in life don't happen overnight. They happen gradually, one with sustained effort over time. I realized I had been measuring progress incorrectly. I had been measuring it by the wrong time frame, the days, the weeks, the months. But true progress is measured in years. Intelligent people understand this, and they read books that help them think in terms of decades, not days. They read not to get an immediate boost, but to build a foundation that will carry them through the years ahead. A colleague of mine exemplified this mindset perfectly. He had been working in the same field for over 20 years, but he never stopped learning. Every year he read books about leadership, strategy, and emotional intelligence. Every year he worked on improving small aspects of his work and his relationships. His progress wasn't flashy, but it was steady, and it paid off. Over time, he became a leader in his field, not because he chased immediate success, but because he consistently made the right decisions day after day, year after year. This is how intelligent people use books to train long-term thinking. They choose books that focus on principles rather than quick fixes. They read about personal growth, not as a sprint, but as a marathon. They are not looking for a single insight that will change everything. They are looking for small, sustainable actions that will create big results over time. Books that teach long-term thinking also teach patience. They help you see that the path to success is not linear. There are setbacks, failures, and delays. But those obstacles are part of the process. Intelligent people do not see failure as a sign to quit. They see it as a step in the learning process, a necessary part of achieving long-term success. I used to get frustrated when things didn't work out right away. I would hit a roadblock, and instead of continuing, I would abandon the project. But after reading books that emphasized long-term thinking, I started to shift my approach. I began to see failure as feedback, not a failure of my abilities, but an opportunity to learn and grow. This change in mindset allowed me to stick with projects longer, even when they didn't yield immediate results. Over time, that perseverance paid off. To apply long-term thinking, you need to shift your focus away from immediate rewards and start thinking in terms of years, not months. Ask yourself, where do I want to be in 5 years? 10 years? The decisions you make today, the books you read, and the actions you take should align with that vision. Long-term thinking is about consistency, not intensity. The truth is, most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 5 or 10 years. Intelligent readers understand this principle. They know that the small changes they make today will compound and lead to big results in the future. They are willing to put in the work now, knowing that the payoff will come later. And because they are consistent, they build momentum that makes it easier to continue. I also learned the value of tracking progress over time. When you are focused on long-term goals, it's easy to feel like nothing is happening. But if you look back over months or years, you can see how far you've come. Intelligent people understand the importance of reflection. They look at their progress regularly and assess how their actions align with their long-term vision. Books that teach long-term thinking are not just about the content they present. They're about the mindset they foster. They help you build the mental framework to think beyond the immediate and see the bigger picture. They remind you that true success is not about quick wins, but about steady progress over time. To apply long-term thinking to your life, start by choosing one area where you want to improve. It could be your health, your career, or your relationships. Read books that focus on long-term growth in that area. Don't look for a quick fix. Look for principles you can apply every day. Make small, sustainable changes that you can maintain for the long term. This is where books become tools, not just sources of information. They help you see beyond the present moment and guide you toward decisions that will pay off years down the road. Intelligent people use books to build habits, shape their character, and align their actions with their long-term goals. In the end, long-term thinking is not just about achieving success. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle success. It's about building resilience, developing patience, and understanding that growth takes time. Books that teach long-term thinking remind us of this truth every time we read them. And over time, they shape us into people who are capable of sustaining success, no matter how long it takes to achieve it. If you want to read like an intelligent person, choose books that foster long-term thinking. Stop looking for the next quick fix and start focusing on the steps you can take today that will lead to bigger results in the future. Long-term thinking is not about doing everything at once. It's about doing the right things consistently and letting time do the rest. Chapter 8. Turning. Reading into identity. Reading is a powerful tool for learning, But it becomes truly transformative when it shifts from being a mere activity to a part of who you are. Intelligent people understand this shift well. They don't just read for knowledge. They read to become someone different, someone who acts based on the principles they absorb. This is the final stage in the reading process, turning what you read into part of your identity. The act of reading is simple enough. You open a book, you read the words, you digest the ideas. But the question is, how does it change you? Many people read books and forget the content almost as soon as they close the cover. Some might even highlight or take notes, but the lessons don't integrate into their daily life. They don't become part of their behavior, their thinking, nor their reactions. Intelligent people don't read to accumulate information. They read to reshape themselves. Books are not just containers of knowledge. They are catalysts for change. But for that change to happen, you need to allow what you read to shape who you are becoming. This means not only understanding a concept, but making it a part of your character. I remember a period in my life when I was devouring books on self-discipline, mental toughness, and emotional control. I felt smarter and more capable after every book, but the change was only superficial. It didn't take long before I was back to procrastinating or reacting emotionally in difficult situations. The truth was that I wasn't applying what I read. I was accumulating knowledge without internalizing it. The moment things shifted was when I began treating books as a tool to build a new identity. I stopped reading for new information and started reading to become a person who lived by the principles in those books. The key was consistency. It wasn't about reading more books or finishing faster. It was about reading slowly and thoughtfully, applying one principle deeply until it became second nature. One book that had a profound impact on me was about mastering emotional control. The lessons were not revolutionary or complicated. In fact, the ideas were simple. Don't let emotions control your actions. Pause before reacting and observe your feelings without judgment. I had read those concepts in many other books before, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about gaining knowledge. It was about learning to live by these principles every day. At first, it was a struggle. I would read a chapter and feel inspired, but then I would forget the lesson when I encountered an emotionally charged situation. So, I decided to commit to one principle at a time. I took a month to focus on practicing emotional control. Each time I was triggered, whether by stress at work or frustration in a conversation, I would pause, take a deep breath, and remember the lessons from the book. The change wasn't immediate, but over time I noticed that I was reacting less. I was able to pause before responding in anger or frustration. The ideas from the book didn't just stay in my mind. They became part of how I responded to life. I wasn't just someone who had read about emotional control. I became someone who lived by it. It became part of my identity. This is where reading meets transformation. It's not enough to simply understand a concept. You have to practice it until it becomes ingrained in who you are. The more you repeat the behaviors and mindsets from the books you read, the more they become part of you. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You don't just know about self-discipline, you become disciplined. I've seen this happen in others as well. A colleague of mine, struggling with confidence and public speaking, started reading books on personal presence and leadership. Like most, she absorbed the information but didn't apply it right away. However, one day, after an uncomfortable meeting where she had felt powerless, she decided to focus on one idea from a book she had read. Speak with authority. Instead of reading more books, she committed to applying that one idea consistently. She practiced using strong, clear language, standing tall, and maintaining eye contact in every meeting, no matter how small. At first, it felt awkward. She didn't feel like a leader, but over time it became natural. Her colleagues began to notice the shift in her presence. They respected her more, and she began to feel more confident. What was once an idea in a book had become an inseparable part of her identity. She no longer had to think about speaking with authority. It was how she spoke. This is the power of turning reading into identity. It's not about doing more, It's about applying deeply. Intelligent people read to become someone who embodies the lessons in the books they read. Books serve as mirrors, reflecting who you are and who you have the potential to become. By repeatedly practicing what you read, you turn those lessons into automatic behaviors. They stop being intellectual concepts and start being part of your very character. To do this, start small. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to change everything at once. Pick one principle, one lesson, one behavior that resonates with you and apply it consistently. Let it become a part of you. When you wake up in the morning, remind yourself of that principle. When faced with a situation that challenges it, pause and apply the lesson. With each repetition, it becomes easier and more natural. This process of transformation is slow, but it is powerful. It doesn't require a radical shift overnight. Instead, it requires small, consistent changes over time. The more you apply, the more it becomes who you are. The key is not to read for knowledge, but to read for transformation. Every book you pick up has the potential to change you, but that change only happens if you read with the intention of living by what you learn. When you turn reading into a process of personal development, you begin to see that books are not just sources of knowledge. They are tools for becoming the person you are meant to be. If you want to read like an intelligent person, choose books that challenge your behavior, not just your ideas. Apply the lessons deeply and make them a part of your identity. Become someone who embodies the principles they read about. And in doing so, you will transform not just your mind, but your life. As we reach the end of this journey, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've covered. In this video, we've explored how intelligent people don't just read books. They use them as tools to reshape their lives. Books aren't just sources of knowledge for them. They are mirrors, they are training grounds, and they are keys to unlocking self-discipline, emotional control, and long-term thinking. We've seen how reading isn't about collecting information. It's about applying ideas so deeply that they become part of who you are. By focusing on one principle at a time and living it consistently, you can transform your behavior, your decisions, and your life. Intelligent people use books to train their minds, to quiet the mental noise, and to build emotional discipline. So they don't read for inspiration, they read to embody the principles they learn. This approach isn't about rushing through books or trying to finish as many as possible. It's about slowing down, picking a principle, and living with it. One idea applied consistently over time will bring more transformation than reading hundreds of books without internalizing their lessons. So, the next time you pick up a book, don't just ask what the book can teach you. Ask what the book can change in you. Which habit, belief, or action can you adopt and live by, day in and day out? Now, here's the part where you get to make this work for you. I encourage you to choose just one principle from this video, something that resonated deeply with you, and commit to it for the next 30 days. Whether it's pausing before reacting, applying emotional discipline, or thinking long-term, whatever it is, let it become a small daily habit that you can anchor your life around. Write it down, reflect on it, apply it. Do this every single day. At the end of the month, you'll be amazed at how much that one simple change can impact your life. Remember, this process of transformation isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about making small, consistent changes that compound over time to create a life of greater control, clarity, and focus. Don't worry if it feels hard or if you stumble along the way. That's all part of the process. The most important thing is that you keep going, that you stay committed to the change you want to see in your life. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. You've already taken the first step toward mastery by showing up and engaging with these ideas. But now, the real work begins. Take what you've learned here, apply it to your life, and start living with purpose, intention, and clarity. It's time to stop just consuming knowledge and start using it to shape your reality. Thank you for your attention and your commitment to self-growth. I appreciate you being here and taking this journey with me. If you found value in this video, share it with someone who could use it. Let them know that change doesn't have to be overwhelming. It starts with small, consistent actions. If you liked what you heard today, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos that dive deeper into self-mastery and personal growth. I look forward to seeing you again in the next video, and where we'll continue exploring how to build a better version of yourself, one step at a time. Keep reading, keep applying, and remember, mastery begins with you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.